So SallyAnn, I guess reflecting on these two sessions, how do you think we balance of get the balance right of doing the work and telling the story of how valuable the work actually is?
Do you mean in terms of the third sector?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose we absolutely need to be action orientated, but I think we also need to be quite considerate about how we tell stories. And I know that we've done a lot of work in our own organisation over the last few years, just about how we give life to the voice of our children and our families. And that's not always about putting a child in front of a microphone or putting a parent in front of a microphone. It's often about how we pull together their experiences into storytelling that we can use in the influencing arena in the public domain. And I think that I think we're faced with such a significant demand at the moment that if we're not really focused on action, then, as you know, we're a service providing charity. We support people financially, we support people psychologically and materially. We have to remain focused on that because the level of need is so great that if we take our eye off that ball, people experience real hardship, and you cannot, as a sector, we can't afford to do that.
And I guess that material part about putting cash in their hands and cash in pockets, like, is there a piece there around how we need to change our relationship with the benefit system and everything else that goes with that?
Absolutely. And the benefit system has had such radical changes over the last 10, 15 years that yes, there is a need for us to review that. But I'm fascinated by how much, as a country, we like to put names on things. So the cash first approach, I think, is a fascinating concept. But it's a concept that actually has been in play in the economy for decades, for hundreds of years. And if I can make a comparison, I was involved in a conversation a couple of weeks ago about a cash first approach for families and how we needed to be evidence-based about if a cash first approach would make a difference to the well-being of children. And it struck me that actually I think we know enough about human development to know that if a human being has enough and is supported in a family environment in which they're able to thrive, that will have an impact, a positive impact on their emotional well-being. And it struck me that we apply these studies to the poor in a way that we would never apply the same type of principle or study to the middle classes. So at the point where government is arguing about reducing income tax because they want to put more money in people's pockets, I don't see anybody stepping forward to say, could we do a research study about the impact of lowering income tax and increasing families' income every week to see if it makes a difference to the well-being of that family? But I hear it all of the time when it comes to poor people. And one of my concerns about our discussion about cash first at the moment, in the context of a shrinking public expenditure in some of the places where it's needed the most, is that we use it as a shorthand to reduce investment in some of those places. And we cannot do that, because what we need to understand is that, yes, families need cash in their pockets. Yes, the state needs to stop punishing them by taking money off them for debt that they can't afford to repay. But actually, those families also, some of them will need additional supports from the state that still need to be in place, a lot of which is not provided through universal services, but is provided through not-for-profit organisations in the third sector.
Yeah, I know it seems completely unjust to be given with one hand and taken away with another. And I think you were saying earlier on you were involved with some other campaigns around trying to cancel debt around school meals provisions and other areas like that.
Yeah, so we've decided as an organisation that we want to do, we do undertake research, and we use some of the Scottish universities and some of their expertise to look at that. So we've looked at the impact of poverty on families. We looked at the impact of school meal debt. So we've been involved in a campaign looking to try to establish two things, trying to get councils to write off school meal debt, because there's a real patchwork quilt of what happens if parents accrue school meal debt. Yeah. Some councils have quite a punitive approach to recovery, others will write it off. So what we are saying is actually it shouldn't be a patchwork quilt. There should be a consistent approach, and that consistent approach in these times should be about writing it off. And thankfully, I think 16 councils have now joined to write off the school meal debt. But what we also discovered was that the eligibility criteria in terms of accessing free school meals, if the eligible income level had kept pace with inflation, would be something over £20,000, and it's significantly under £20,000. So there's a group of families in the middle there, people who are working, who have income, but can't access school meal debt, that 10 years ago, 12 years ago, would have been able to access free school meals for their children, and they're caught in a trap of escalating debt to schools. So it's again, let's look at the whole state of our economy, how rich we are. Government at local level and at Scottish level could make different decisions to protect those families that need it the most.
And I guess there's a real sense that if we're getting it right for those families, we'll get it right for everybody.
Absolutely. And that's the whole concept, isn't it, of a well-being economy? If you structure your economy around those who are furthest away from privilege, power, and actually living a life in which they can thrive, start with them. And if we get that right for those citizens and support them to contribute as much as they can to society and to the economy, it falls into place for the rest of us. We fundamentally, as a country, need to think about our tax burden and how many billionaires we need within the country, and how. So we talk about levelling up, but we also need to talk about levelling down. How do we actually look at a sensible redistribution of wealth, which means that in an economy as rich as the UK's is, we can fundamentally shift the dial towards those who have the least.
Yeah, no, I think that is absolutely spot on. Did you have any?
I was just thinking back to some of the things that you were talking about at the start around partners, about the people that we're here to serve, about having them as partners, and thinking about just what you were talking about around poverty as well, about how can we involve the people that we're working with to be more partnerships in this, understanding what is happening to them and why it's happening, and how we can make that difference and how we can shift that round. And as you were saying, you know, we hear lots of research about how it's affecting lots of the people who are in poverty, but there is no research above that scale. So is there something about being louder about that, or shouting more about this? That's kind of been some of the things we've been talking about this morning, about having a louder voice around things.
So I think for me, part of it is about reframing it, because part of what we run the risk of doing is inadvertently stigmatising people who find themselves in really challenging circumstances, where so we always have to get alongside people, as far as I'm concerned, and work with them at their pace about what they contribute in terms of public statements, or if they want to contribute anything. But we also need to reframe the conversation and start to ask questions about the why. So one of the issues I would raise about the cash first approach is, and we've seen this within our own organisation. So I made a suggestion a few years ago that we should, in a limited way, when we could, actually pay debt for people. And it actually had quite a strong response within the organisation. And there was a value judgment at play, and we get that quite a lot. So I think we actually need to reframe that, and because actually the research tells us if we give people with low incomes more money, they'll use it wisely. It's people like me that don't know how to budget.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, SallyAnn.
We'll see you soon.